everyone. We have an extra segment for Eagle's Eye. And next is our interview that we had with an immigration lawyer here at Norristown. And we decided to make a little extra because it's very long. It's 20 minutes. And our wonderful camerawoman, Samantha, did the interview. Wanted her to say hi there. And it's a really informational interview. And I think it was really important for Norristown especially. So you should go check that out.
Hi, my name is Samantha Detweiler, and I'm here talking to Eduardo Otero about immigration. He is an immigration lawyer, so it's going to be interesting to find out some facts about it. Hi, how are you doing today?
Hi, Samantha. How are you?
I'm good. So, approximately how many immigrants do you think are here at the United States?
Well, there was a census a few years ago, and they calculated more or less about 12 million. But that number is really not that precise because we know for a fact that a lot of immigrants, especially some that were undocumented, were very fearful to answer the census for obvious reasons. So we don't think that's an accurate number as to how many there are, and there may be many more than that we may never know because they're not going to trust the census, and even less so now.
Yeah, that's a huge number anyway. So what are some of the different types of immigrants that come over here to the United States?
Okay, well, basically there are two types of immigrants. There's the legal immigration, which is people that come with visas, for example, student visas, work visas, some exchange program visas for artists, some athletes. And then there's a non-legal immigration, which is unfortunately most folks that are coming to the United States are what we call undocumented. That means they were not able to obtain a visa abroad, or because of a desperate situation in their country, they have to flee. And they have to leave without having to go through all the bureaucratic process of obtaining some kind of a visa or obtaining some kind of status in the United States. They have to go. They're obligated to go as soon as possible. And that's what we see crossing our borders a lot of the times. Some people do it for economic need also, it's true, but a lot of them do it, many of them do it because of the situation in their home countries has become desperate and has become dangerous to them or their families. And they feel that the United States will be able to provide a safe haven and a better opportunity for them to grow as a family or as individuals.
So how does that work with them having to come over for an emergency or something like that?
For example, somebody that's actually fleeing their country because of the situation, as we know, it's happened a lot in Central America with the out-of-control gang violence. I mean, countries like Honduras right now are actually more violent and a higher death rate than Syria. So when you see these examples of countries and how the violence has overtaken pretty much the government, because they can't even act against it because it's so widespread and is related to a lot of the drug cartels, is related to a lot of extortion, and these gangs have basically operated for a long time, very well organized and very well armed, and they've created a danger to the community, to the general population of these countries. Those folks have come to the United States, and most of them will be applying for political asylum. It's something they're entitled to do under the law. They have to receive the protection of the United States as their case is heard because they have a right under due process clause of the Constitution to be able to have that case heard by either an immigration officer, and if that's denied, then by an immigration judge, who will be the impartial government representative who would hear the cases, the claims for asylum, and under the law, under the guidance of the laws of an asylum, will decide whether this person receives that benefit or not. But that would be political asylum, and we have a large numbers of immigrants that are coming in applying for that.
So what are some of the requirements for some of the visas that they can acquire?
Okay. So when we talk about the legal immigration into this country, there are a whole variety of visas. They're all by letters, and we have from the A visa, which is a diplomatic visa, for example, to R's or T's or U's. Let's say the last one I think is a U visa, which is in the alphabet, which is for victims of a crime in the United States, victims of a serious crime. So this whole variety. But you see the visas, most common visa probably for non-immigrants. For non-immigrants that are coming with an immigration visa, it's a little complicated, but they're not coming here to stay. They come here for a temporary stay to perform a specific duty in the United States or job or activity. And that's we have students, which is an F visa, which is the most common, or H visas, which are temporary workers, or for example, P visas, which are for athletes and professionals, O visas for outstanding researchers or outstanding professors or experts in their fields, or just a F visa, I'm sorry, the B visa, which is just for a tourist to stay here temporarily and visit. So there's all these variety of visas. They have a term limit, and then once that term limit, you're either entitled to renew it or you have to go back to your home country. Now, some of those visas could lead to a green card application, but a very different process. And if you're doing the green card, you can do it in two ways. You can either do it through a family member, which is usually a parent, or not usually, it's kind of legally required to do it through a parent, through a son or daughter, or through a spouse. And if that family member has U.S. citizenship or lawful permanent resident status, which is a green card holder, then they can actually apply and receive the benefit as an immediate relative of that person who has status in the United States. The process varies depending on the status of the person in the United States and what your relationship is to that family member. And then the other side of it is the employment immigration. You can get a green card through employment if you have legal status in the United States, not if you enter illegally or if you're in unlawful status here, you overstay your visa, for example. And it depends on the skill level and what kind of job is the offer. Those type of cases, they have to demonstrate, as opposed to common, I think maybe people think that they just come over, take their job, and all of a sudden they get papers. It's not that way at all. It's a fallacy. It's completely not true. In order to obtain a green card through employment, you have to demonstrate, and it's a very difficult process with the Department of Labor, that you're not displacing or lowering the wages for American workers.
Okay.
And that's a process that's very regulated by the Department of Labor. There's very little fraud in that regard. It's costly because they have to actually show by advertising and promoting this job that no Americans were willing or able to take the job. And they're very strict as to how you disqualify an American citizen in the application of this job. So people that go through the green card process through employment, they go through a lot of hurdles to get it.
So approximately how long do you think it would take for someone to get their green card?
Depends on what it is. If through family, it may take about 8 months, maybe a year, depending on the family member that it is. If it's a U.S. citizen spouse, it's quicker. But for example, if you're the parent and your child is over 21, it could take 3 years or 4 years because there's a queue, there's a line, and you have to wait until your number comes up. So going to the bakery and getting that number, and you have to wait till they call you up, and that's how it works. Through employment, again, depends, but through employment it could be between, and that's if you have legal status in the United States. If you don't have legal status, you can forget about the process. If you have legal status, it could take a year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the job and what the steps have been taken to take that job, because there are jobs that are actually difficult to get, or that the green card is not available for those type of jobs, for example, because there's a lot of Americans who can do the job, and it's all depending on the skill level.
So, for instance, if an immigrant doesn't have a visa or anything, how can they go to acquire citizenship or anything?
If they don't have one, they will not get citizenship. Only a person that has a green card, not just a visa, a temporary worker, a person, an athlete that only comes here temporarily, or a student cannot get citizenship. Only somebody who's had his lawful permanent resident status, i.e. his green card, 3 years if you're married to a U.S. citizen, 5 years if you're not.
Okay.
And they have to wait those 5 years. They cannot have any type of criminal record. They cannot own any federal taxes or state taxes. They have to comply with a lot of legal requirements in order to become a citizen. So it's not that easy of a process. And that's also one of the lack of information that people have, that they, and I think it's partially the fault of the politicians, that they've called the immigration system a path to citizenship. There's no path to citizenship.
Yeah.
There's a path to legal status, or being a green card holder. Then the option of that person is to become a citizen, and that's a whole different path that you may or may not decide to take. But it's not just because you come in and you do fill out a few forms that you become a U.S. citizen. Absolutely not the truth. It's a very long process, a very complicated process. And to become a U.S. citizen, you have to pass a test. Like I said, you have to have a perfectly clean criminal record, absolutely clean. There's nothing. You have to have had pay taxes. You have to show that you're not going to become a public charge to the United States government. So there are a lot of hurdles that you have to prove in order to become a U.S. citizen, like they are to become a permanent resident, a green card holder. There are a lot of requisites, requirements that you have to comply with. So this path, it sounds so easy when politicians talk about it. It's completely opposite. It's actually very complicated, very costly, and people have to have everything in line and behave like some of the best U.S. citizens you'll see. They have to be like that.
So other than some legal stuff that's very difficult and very challenging, what are other challenges that they're going to have to face coming here to the United States?
As we all can deduce, language, culture. One of the things that I see that I'm surprised about my clients is how easy they adapt, how they adapt in a way that they get the jobs, that they work hard, because they have incredible motivation and incentive to change. They're abandoning a culture, a language, a tradition by moving here that it's very hard. I mean, for us as Americans being here, being used to certain things, it's like moving to another country where you don't speak the language, where you don't know anybody, where your family circle may not be there, and you have to find a job, and you don't know how to do it or how to go about it. And there's really not a lot of people helping you do it. So it's amazing the stories that you hear of people struggling, overcoming all this difference, all these problems and obstacles, and becoming business owners, highly skilled professionals, and incredible members of our society that are contributing every day, either by tax payments, by buying things. Our economy is supported by them in a very large portion. So that's what we'll have to understand, that they're giving up a lot, and that's a huge challenge. And then we go into challenges to just coming here. I mean, the stories that I hear of people, kids who've left their home because they're afraid, and they come here by themselves. A trip that I would never even do. It's crazy. I mean, the risks that they run just crossing through Central America and some of the most violent and dangerous countries in the world, and their kids or families going through that, and they do it. And to me, that's incredibly risky, but incredibly courageous.
Of course. So, in the perspective of an immigrant, what are 5 important things that they need to know before coming over here?
Important things to know. First of all, don't encourage somebody to come here illegally. Try to do it the legal way, absolutely. Try to contact an attorney if you have a relative who's abroad, and they may have an opportunity to come here legally through a visa process, and it's possible. And there are some visas, for example, work visas, that will allow that person to come in and perform a job, a specific job, for a temporary period of time in the United States. There's also family members that could petition for a spouse if she lives abroad, or children if they're abroad and they have obtained legal status in the United States. So those are, number one, I would say, try to find the legal way if the person is abroad to bring them here. Because if they're here undocumented, or they enter the country legally, or they came with a visa that they let expire, it's more complicated. So try that option first. Second, what I would say, if they are in the United States, they have legal rights, and they have to ask for those legal rights. They're theirs, and they're protected by the Constitution of the United States, and they have all these rights that sometimes people are not aware of, or they feel because they don't have immigration status or some status in the United States, that those rights they don't belong to them, and they absolutely do. And number 3, the only person that can actually, the only body that can actually deport somebody once they've entered the United States, whether legally or illegally, is an immigration judge. Immigration is here to enforce the laws outside of the border at the airports. Inside, they can enforce the laws, but they cannot actually execute a deportation unless there's a previous negative immigration history. If you're just a person that came in, crossed the border, you're inside the United States, they catch you in Chicago for whatever reason, and immigration is trying to deport you, it's not up to immigration to do it. The agency itself, it's up to an immigration judge.
Okay.
Because in the due process, you need an independent, you need an impartial government representative to execute such a punishment like a deportation. So they have to be aware of that they have those rights, they have the right to go to court, they have a right to apply for benefits, if they're entitled to those benefits, and they're entitled to have their day in court to make sure that their process is compliant with the laws.
Okay. So I know press is a big thing and Americans always listen to it. So what are some of the things that press is telling us that is incorrect about immigration?
Okay, there are a few things that when I put on the news that I hear and I just cringe. For example, this path to citizenship, it's a fallacy. Nobody's here on a path to citizenship. It almost sounds like you're sliding through the system and all of a sudden you get your U.S. passport. Not true. It's a struggle, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of legal hurdles they have to overcome, and most people that try don't get to that end. So it's very difficult. Another thing that I hear is that the immigrants are basically using the system and abusing the system, whether it's our public high schools, whether it's our welfare system. Is not true. First of all, our high schools can provide education. That's the purpose of an education. I'd much rather have an educated population or young people than not. And I think whether their immigration status is not relevant, they're not entitled to apply for welfare at all. So if you don't have a green card, and even sometimes with a green card, you have restrictions as to who can apply for welfare, but they cannot apply for welfare. You hear sometimes that an immigrant family with no status may be receiving benefits. Those benefits are for their children who are born in the United States.
Okay.
They're U.S. citizens by birth. They can get some of the benefits. The parents, the siblings, anybody who's a foreign national is not entitled to those benefits. So they're not really taken out from those benefits, from the welfare system. And the other thing, for example, is, they're not paying taxes. Well, the story is very different. In my experience, a lot of them are paying taxes because their employer would force them to get paid by check and be on payroll. They can obtain what's called a tax ID number from the IRS. That's a number similar to a Social Security number, but specifically designed to pay taxes. So the IRS will collect those taxes. They will not get a refund. Most of those people will not get a refund. Or some of the folks made up a number in order to work. They're desperate, they're made up a number. Some people may consider that fraud. We can argue it's more of a necessity. They need to support their families, and I'd much rather have somebody working than committing crimes or doing something illegally to support themselves. So they're trying to work, and those people will never see a refund because their numbers does not match the IRS records. So they're actually, when the press is saying, well, they're not paying taxes, yes, they are. And they're paying sales taxes. We all do it. Every time they purchase something, whether it's a home or a candy at the store, they're paying sales taxes. And that contributes to a lot of our programs in this country. So to what the news have portrayed sometimes of them taken away from the system, I think this is not true. I think immigrants are given more to the system than people realize.
So what can non-immigrants do to better the situation for others?
I think if U.S. citizens can help the immigrant community by being supportive, tell them, give them a helping hand. They need it. Put yourself in that situation. If you're that person, for whatever reason, that you have to go to another country, that you have to be there, you would want a helping hand from the people that are there already, that they can really do something. Don't believe everything they say about their criminal records or they're taking away from us. They're not. The vast majority of the people we represent are contributing to our society. So welcome that. And understand that this country is made of immigrants. I mean, we are descendants from all of us, from immigrants. We all at one point or another immigrated, whether it's our grandparents, our great-grandparents, we immigrated. So respect that tradition, respect that history. The United States is where it is today because of that immigration. not because we expel those immigrants. So if we welcome them, if we welcome them with a process that makes sense, I'm not talking about opening the floodgates, but certainly a system that is restrictive, that screens people that are coming in, let them come in and let them be productive citizens and let them be productive members of our society. And people need to realize that. So that's what they can do.
I just want to talk about DACA a little bit. So how does DACA protect the immigrants?
DACA was a program designed by the Obama administration. It's an executive order, so it's not a law. And what DACA does is protected young immigrants who came here underage by their parents. That goes to the concept of, like, if you're a child, if you're a minor, you don't have the option. Your parents, like, it would happen to you. If your parents decide to move to Texas tomorrow and you're 15 years old, what is your choice? Your parents can say, okay, you stay in Pennsylvania, we're leaving, we're moving to Texas. No, you need to come with them. Same thing with these immigrants. It protects those kids that were forced by their parents to come to the United States. They had no choice. Either stay behind by themselves or come with them. A lot of them decide to come by themselves, but a lot of them decide to come with their families, and they're here. If you're their child, and if you tell the government that I will actually be educated and work towards a high school diploma or obtain a high school diploma, you are entitled to certain benefits, one of them being DACA, which provides you not a green card, not any kind of lawful status. You're still in limbo. But it's basically a promise of the United States government that you will not be deported because you came here involuntarily, and you're studying, and you're actually going to become a productive member of society with that education, whether it's going to college, whether it's to get a job. And the government of Obama, the administration, recognized that these people needed that protection. They were here unprotected for many, many, many years, for decades, and this provided that protection to them. And in my personal experience, the vast majority, I mean, I don't want to say 100%, but a very high percentage, above 90% of children that have obtained the benefits under DACA have become incredible members of society, incredibly productive, and just positive to our general population, and definitely not a negative.
So what would happen if DACA is terminated in the future?
Well, I think the numbers are about 800,000 DACA beneficiaries that benefit from the program. So you're talking about the deportation of 800,000 school students or recent graduates or young professionals. And I think that's the last thing we need, to be honest with you. I mean, what I've said before is the example of these kids taking advantage of the program, being grateful about this opportunity that has been given to them by this executive order, and progressing and moving forward and creating families and getting married and doing what we value the most, which is being a productive member. And we see that more and more. Those kids could face deportation. And we're talking about 800,000 people in deportation. And furthermore, they're talking about another program that's been in the books, and that is a law actually, since the 1980s, which is TPS, which is the Temporary Protective Status, which is very similar to DACA because it doesn't give you a green card, it doesn't give you a permanent status in the United States. It's almost like you're in limbo. But you're in limbo for a reason. And instead of deporting them, we should give them the next step, which is give them the security of a status in the United States instead of being in limbo. If you're going to try to deport DACA beneficiaries or TPS beneficiaries, we'll probably be deporting people for the next 20 years or more. And the backlogs are going to be immense, and actually not probably going after the people that should be deported. There are people in this country that should be deported that haven't behaved, that have committed serious crimes. They shouldn't be here, and I would much rather have those people deported than others that are contributing to our society.
Of course. So how can people support Dreamers? Like, how can we support them in their struggles, especially around this time?
Talk to your parents. Talk to your friends, talk to your relatives, explain a little bit of what these students mean to you, who they are, what they mean to this country, and have people call their politicians. You know, you guys, you're a younger generation, you have a lot of power. You have a lot of motivation, and this is your future. And your future is not exclusive to you. It's your future, it's a community. And fight for that future. Call your politicians. Yeah, maybe you can't vote. Absolutely. Well, you can't vote. You're under 18. Doesn't matter. Your voice needs to be heard. Your family's voice needs to be heard. Tell your parents about it and say, call the politician. Tell them not to do this. Tell them to be fair and act, because it's our future. You know, we folks, we're going to be gone. You guys are the next generation. You guys are the ones that have to remain with this. You want a better world, not for us to leave it worse than it is. So do that, talk, inform yourself, do the political activities.
Okay. And is there any other information that people should know?
Well, as to what Americans should know, I think it's clear. Support the laws. Respect the laws. I'm as an attorney, obviously, I have to respect the laws, and I have to respect what our government decides. But there are ways in which people can help. And like I said, get involved in politics, do the right thing. And for those folks who are immigrants, who maybe listen to this, and maybe they're thinking about being a U.S. citizen or not, please become U.S. citizens. If you have that green card, it's very important, and I always said this for many years, it's become a U.S. citizen. Your rights are enhanced. You can do many things by being a U.S. citizen. Don't just remain as a green card holder. Become a U.S. citizen and become a participant of our society.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
No problem. I'm Samantha here talking to Eduardo Otero about immigration. If you would like some more information, especially in Spanish, you can go over to our Spanish language program on YouTube and learn some more information about that. So back to our hosts.
So that's it for this extra segment on immigration. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And if you would like to hear it in Spanish or share it with your Spanish friends or family, you can see it on NASDV TV en Español. That's our new YouTube channel. And if you would like more things like this, please let us know. We're really trying to incorporate a wide variety of things onto our NASD TV YouTube channel and news channel. And you should, if you want to give us feedback, you can comment or go to our new Facebook page, Instagram, and really let us know that you enjoyed it. And once again, you can check out more Spanish language things on NASD TV and Español. And that's it for this special segment.